Mom, we can't go home tonight. I heard Grandpa and Uncle David planning something bad for us. My 8-year-old whispered those words in the airport parking lot, 10 minutes after we watched my husband disappear through security for his business trip. His small hand trembled in mine. His eyes held a fear I'd never seen before. So we hid. I drove to a motel 12 minutes away, paid cash, and watched our home through a security camera I'd hidden months ago. 10 minutes after we should have been asleep in our beds, I froze, staring at my phone screen as two strangers walked through our front door using keys my stepfather had given them. I'm Lisa Huntington, 34 years old, and this is the story of the night my son saved both our lives with a whisper, and what I discovered about the man I'd called Dad for 20 years. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. To understand how I ended up watching my own house burn from a motel parking lot, you need to understand where I stood in that family. I'm a cybersecurity engineer. I work remotely for SecureNet Solutions, a Fortune 500 company that pays me $127,000 a year to protect their systems from people who want to steal data and destroy lives. I've built firewalls that have stopped nation-state hackers. I've testified in federal court about digital forensics. My work has been cited in 3 Department of Homeland Security briefings. To Chad Morrison, I was the girl who types on computers. That's what he told the neighbors when they asked what I did for a living. That's how he introduced me at church functions, when he bothered to introduce me at all. Last year, the roof started leaking. Water damage in 3 rooms, mold spreading through the walls. I wrote a check for $18,000 to fix it because Chad claimed he couldn't afford it, despite never actually showing me his finances. When the contractors finished, I overheard him telling the couple next door that he'd taken care of it himself. Not Lisa paid for it, not even we handled it together. Just him, the responsible patriarch managing his household. I stayed because of my mother. She died 4 years ago in that house, in the bedroom that would later become mine. I stayed because I thought I owed something to the man she loved, even though he never seemed to love anything about her except the house she left behind. I kept copies of every receipt, every wire transfer, every contractor invoice in a cloud folder labeled Home Repairs. Professional habit. In my line of work, you always maintain backups. I didn't know then that this habit would save my life. Our house sat on Oak Ridge Lane in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, a 2-story colonial with blue shutters and a wraparound porch that my mother had painted herself the summer before she got sick. The neighborhood was the kind of place where people waved from their driveways and knew each other's dogs by name. My days followed a predictable rhythm. I'd wake at 6, make breakfast for Lucas, see him off to school, then climb the stairs to my home office on the 2nd floor. 8 hours of code reviews, vulnerability assessments, and video calls with teams in 3 time zones. Lucas would come home at 3:15, do homework at the kitchen table while I finished my last meetings, and we'd have dinner together before Marcus called from whatever hotel room his job had sent him to that week. Marcus traveled constantly. Regional manager for TechMart meant he spent more nights in Hampton Inns than in our bed. He hated it. I hated it. But the salary let us stay in the house, and staying in the house meant staying close to my mother's memory. Chad lived on the 1st floor in what used to be the guest suite. David, his son from his first marriage, visited 3 or 4 times a week, always unannounced, always acting like he owned the place. To outsiders, we looked like a functional blended family. The devoted grandfather who went to church every Sunday. The hard-working daughter keeping her mother's home alive. The quiet grandson with the shy smile. Lucas was the first one to see through it. "Mom," he said one night while I tucked him in, "I don't like it when Grandpa Chad smiles." I smoothed his hair. "Why not, baby?" "Because his eyes don't smile, just his mouth." I told him he was imagining things. I wish I hadn't. David Morrison was 31 years old and had never held a job for longer than 8 months. Not that anyone was supposed to mention this. Chad had spent $80,000 sending David to 3 different colleges, business administration, then marketing, then something vague called entrepreneurial studies. David dropped out of all three to pursue startup ideas that never got past the planning stage. A food truck, a cryptocurrency trading platform, an app for dog walkers that already existed in 6 different forms. Each failure was someone else's fault. The investors didn't understand his vision, the market wasn't ready, the partners were incompetent. "You have your fancy degree," David told me once, standing in my kitchen like he paid the mortgage. "I had to learn from the School of Hard Knocks. That's real education." The School of Hard Knocks apparently included letting yourself into your father's stepdaughter's house whenever you felt like it. I started finding things moved in my home office, papers shuffled, drawers not quite closed. The first time, I thought I was being paranoid. The second time, I installed a backup camera in my office, a small unit hidden in a bookshelf, connected to a separate cloud account that Chad didn't know existed. Professional habit. When something feels wrong in a system, you add monitoring. The footage showed David going through my desk at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, while I was picking Lucas up from school. He photographed several documents, including my employment contract and a bank statement. I didn't confront him, I didn't tell Chad. I just started keeping certain files in encrypted folders and made sure my most important documents lived in 3 different cloud backups. That night, I saw Chad and David talking in the garage until nearly midnight. Their voices were low, urgent. The garage door was closed, but I could see the light under it, shadows moving. Something was wrong. I just didn't know what yet. Lucas came into this world 3 weeks early, weighing 4 pounds and 11 ounces, with lungs that weren't ready to breathe on their own. 21 days in the NICU. Monitors beeping, tubes everywhere, my son's tiny chest rising and falling with mechanical precision while I sat beside him and bargained with God. I would give anything, I promised. Anything at all, if he would just keep breathing. He kept breathing. He learned to eat. He grew strong enough to come home. And from that moment on, every decision I made started with the same question. Is this safe for Lucas? That instinct, the one that made me check locks twice, that made me research car seat ratings for hours, that made me memorize the fastest route to the emergency room, that instinct had kept us both alive for 8 years. Lately, it was screaming. Lucas had changed over the past few months. He'd always been a quiet child, more observer than participant, but now he seemed withdrawn in a different way. He didn't want to be alone in rooms with Chad. He flinched when David's car pulled into the driveway. He started sleeping with his door locked, something he'd never done before. "What's wrong, baby?" I asked him one night, sitting on the edge of his bed. "You can tell me anything." He looked at me with those serious brown eyes, my mother's eyes, the same ones I saw in the mirror every morning, and said, "I don't know, Mom. I just feel like something bad is coming." I should have listened harder. I should have pushed. Instead, I kissed his forehead and told him everything was fine. The night before Marcus left for Denver, I dreamed our house was on fire. I stood on the front lawn watching flames pour from the windows of my bedroom, the room that used to be my mother's, while someone laughed behind me. I woke at 3:47 a.m., drenched in sweat, heart slamming against my ribs. Marcus was already packing his suitcase. 5 days in Denver, meetings with corporate, nothing unusual. But Lucas clung to his father that morning like he might never see him again. The signs were there. I just wasn't reading them. 3 weeks before everything happened, Chad replaced the lock on the back door. He said the old one was broken, but I'd used it the day before without any problem. The new lock came with 3 keys, one for Chad, one for David, and one that was supposed to be for me, but somehow never materialized. "I'll get you a copy made," he said. He never did. Then there was the envelope. I found it on the kitchen counter on a Thursday afternoon, a thick manila envelope from Midwest Life Insurance with my name printed on the address label. I reached for it just as Chad walked in from the garage. "That's not for you," he said, snatching it away. "Wrong address. I'll send it back." "But it has my name on it." "It's a mistake." His voice was sharp. Then he smiled, and the smile didn't reach his eyes. Insurance companies make errors all the time. I used to work in that industry, remember? I'll handle it. I didn't push. I never pushed. That was my problem. 2 days later, Janet Powell knocked on my door. She was 67 years old, had lived next door for 30 years, and had been my mother's closest friend. She brought banana bread and worried eyes. "Lisa, honey, I need to tell you something." She glanced toward the garage where Chad was washing his car. "Your mother, before she passed, she said some things to me about Chad." My chest tightened. "What things?" "She said," Janet lowered her voice. "She said he changed after she got sick. Said he started asking questions about her insurance, her will, the house. She told me to watch out for you." "Why didn't you tell me before?" Janet's face crumpled. "I didn't want to interfere in family business. But lately, watching how he looks at you when you're not paying attention, I can't stay quiet anymore." She left before I could ask what she meant, but her words stayed with me. Thursday, March 14th, 6:30 p.m. The evening light slanted gold through the kitchen windows as Marcus double-checked his carry-on for the third time. Laptop, charger, 3 days of clothes, a tie he probably wouldn't wear. 5 days in Denver, quarterly review with corporate. "You're sure you'll be okay?" he asked, pulling me into a hug. "I can reschedule if you need me here." "We'll be fine." I said it automatically, the way I always did, but something felt wrong, like a splinter I couldn't find. Lucas hadn't said a word all evening. He'd eaten half his dinner, pushed the rest around his plate, and now sat on the stairs with his backpack clutched to his chest like a shield. His eyes kept darting toward Chad's door. "Come on, buddy." Marcus crouched beside him. "Give your dad a hug." Lucas threw his arms around Marcus's neck and didn't let go. I watched my husband's face shift from affection to concern. Hey, it's just 5 days. I'll call every night." "I know." Lucas's voice was muffled against Marcus's shoulder. I'm going to miss you." We loaded into my Tesla Model Y at 6:45. Cedar Rapids Airport was 20 minutes away. As we backed out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Chad standing at the window of his room, watching us leave. The expression on his face wasn't sadness. It wasn't even the blank neutrality I'd grown used to. It looked like anticipation. I almost turned around right then, almost asked Marcus what that look meant. But Lucas was quiet in the back seat, and the airport was waiting, and I convinced myself I was imagining things again. On the drive, I realized this was the first time in 3 years that Chad hadn't asked me to pick something up from the store before Marcus left. He always needed something: milk, medication, a specific brand of coffee. It was his way of making sure I had errands, obligations. This time, nothing, like he wanted the house to be empty. Cedar Rapids. Airport at 7:15 p.m. was quiet. A handful of business travelers shuffled through security, their rolling bags clicking against the tile floors. We walked Marcus to the checkpoint, and I watched him disappear through the scanner with one final wave over his shoulder. "Okay, baby." I took Lucas's hand. "Let's head home." Lucas didn't move. His fingers tightened around mine, and when I looked down, his face was chalk white. His eyes were fixed on something far away, something I couldn't see. "Lucas? What's wrong?" He pulled my hand, hard, dragging me toward a row of empty seats near the window. His breath came fast and shallow, and when he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, we can't go home." The world tilted. "What do you mean?" "Last night." His words tumbled out in a rush. "I was getting water. It was late. I heard Grandpa Chad and Uncle David talking in the kitchen. They didn't know I was there." My heart rate spiked. "What did they say?" "They were talking about you and me." Lucas's eyes filled with tears. "Uncle David said, after Marcus leaves, and Grandpa Chad said it needs to be done right, and then—" His voice cracked. "Then they said make sure it looks like an accident. And they were talking about gasoline, Mom. I heard them say gasoline. I felt the blood drain from my face. Gasoline. Accident. After Marcus leaves. Maybe you misheard. I didn't. Lucas was crying now, silently, the way he'd learned to cry when he didn't want to be caught. Please, Mom. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Don't make me go back there. Every instinct I had, every protective instinct that had kept my premature baby alive, that had made me back up every document, that had made me hide a camera in my own office, every single one of them screamed the same thing. Believe him. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 7:23 p.m. If Lucas was right, I had maybe 4 hours to figure out what was happening before whatever Chad had planned was supposed to begin. Okay, I said. We're not going home. I found a motel 12 minutes from the airport. Sleepwell Inn, a 2-story block of beige concrete with a flickering vacancy sign and parking lot cracks filled with weeds. It was the kind of place business travelers avoided and construction crews used for long projects. It was perfect. I paid cash at the front desk. The clerk, a heavy-set man with a gray beard, barely looked up from his phone as he handed me the key to room 214, second floor, facing the main road. Checkout's at 11, he said. Thank you. Lucas was trembling in the passenger seat when I returned. I drove around to the back of the building, parked where the car couldn't be seen from the road, and carried our minimal belongings up the exterior stairs. The room smelled like industrial cleaner and stale cigarettes. I checked the locks twice, then sat Lucas on the bed and wrapped him in the thin blanket. I need to make a call, I said. Just to Grandpa Chad. I'm going to tell him we're not coming home tonight. What will you say? That the car broke down. I kept my voice calm, even as my mind raced. That we're staying near the airport to get it fixed. I dialed. Chad answered on the second ring. Lisa, where are you? It's almost 8. The car started making a noise. I think there's something wrong with the engine. I forced my voice into frustrated exhaustion. I'm going to stay at a motel near the airport and take it to a mechanic in the morning. Silence. 3 seconds. 4. Oh, Chad said. Well, that's probably smart. Don't want to be stranded on the road at night. No concern. No offer to come pick us up. No question about what was wrong with the car. Yeah, I said. We'll be home tomorrow afternoon. All right. Don't rush. Take your time. He hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand. The man who complained when I was 15 minutes late from the grocery store had just told me to take my time, after his granddaughter and great-grandson were supposedly stranded with a broken car. Something was very, very wrong. Lucas fell asleep around 9, curled on his side with the TV playing cartoons on mute. I sat at the small desk by the window, laptop open, trying to make sense of what I knew. First, I logged into the Ring app. Our home had 3 cameras: front door, back door, and garage. Chad had access to all of them. He'd insisted when we set up the system, claiming he needed to monitor packages. At 8:30 p.m., all 3 cameras went offline. Not a glitch, not a power outage. Someone had manually disabled them from the app. My hands shook as I opened a different app, the one connected to the hidden camera I'd installed in my home office after catching David going through my things. It ran on a separate network, backed up to a personal cloud account that Chad didn't know existed. The camera was still active. I watched the feed in real time. My office was dark, but the camera's night vision showed the hallway beyond my open door. At 9:15 p.m., the front door opened. Chad's silhouette moved through the entryway, followed by David. They didn't turn on any lights. At 9:47 p.m., headlights swept across the hallway. I heard, or thought I heard through the low-quality audio, the front door open again. 2 figures I didn't recognize entered the house. They wore dark hoodies and moved with purpose, like men who had rehearsed this. Chad handed one of them something metallic. A key. My key. The one to the back door that I'd never received a copy of. The 4 men, Chad, David, and the 2 strangers, stood in my hallway for several minutes. Chad pointed up the stairs, toward the second floor, toward my bedroom. Then they moved out of frame, toward the back of the house. I sat in that motel room, watching strangers in my home, and understood with perfect clarity. If I had gone home tonight, Lucas and I would not have woken up tomorrow. I recorded everything. My laptop captured the camera feed, timestamp visible in the corner. 9:47 p.m., 9:52 p.m., 10:03 p.m. Every movement those men made through my home was documented and automatically uploaded to 3 different cloud services. At 10:15 p.m., the 4 figures reappeared in my office's field of view. One of the strangers carried a black duffel bag that hadn't been there before. The other held what looked like a red plastic container, the kind you use for gasoline at a lawnmower. David handed Chad a piece of paper. They studied it together, and though I couldn't make out the details, the way they pointed and nodded suggested they were reviewing a plan. A layout. Maybe a timeline. Then Chad shook hands with both strangers. A business transaction concluded. At 10:31 p.m., all 4 left through the back door. The 2 strangers walked to a dark sedan parked on the street behind our property, a spot I'd always thought was too far away for our cameras to reach. Chad had known exactly where the blind spots were. I called Marcus. The phone rang 5 times before going to voicemail. Right. He was still on his flight to Denver, phone in airplane mode, 30,000 feet above Nebraska, while someone prepared to burn down our home. I left a message I hoped he'd never have to hear. Marcus, it's me. Something's happening. Don't call Chad. Don't call the house. When you land, call me immediately. Lucas and I are safe, but... My voice broke. I need you to trust me. Please. At 11:15 p.m., headlights appeared on my hidden camera again. The dark sedan returned. This time, only the 2 strangers got out. No Chad, no David. Just 2 men with keys to my house, walking through my front door like they belonged there. I checked my phone. No message from Chad asking if I was okay. No call from concerned relatives. No one wondering where we were. Because they all knew we were supposed to be home, and they all knew what was coming. I grabbed my keys and looked at Lucas, still sleeping peacefully in the motel bed. I needed to see this with my own eyes. I left Lucas in the locked room with a note on the pillow. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll be back in 15 minutes. I love you more than anything in this world. The drive to Oak Ridge Lane took 11 minutes. I parked on the corner of Maple Street, 200 meters from our house, engine off, headlights dark. From this angle, I could see the second floor clearly. The windows of my bedroom, the window of Lucas's room, the bathroom we shared. The lights were off inside. The house looked exactly like it always did when we were asleep. At 11:52 p.m., the second floor windows exploded with light. Not electrical light, not the warm glow of a lamp accidentally left on. Fire. Orange flames roared behind the glass of my bedroom window, spreading with terrifying speed. Within seconds, the room where my mother had died, the room where Lucas and I should have been sleeping, was fully engulfed. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, and watched my house burn while my Tesla's dashcam recorded everything. The 2 men came running out the back door at 11:54 p.m. The camera caught them clearly, one tall, one shorter, both wearing gloves, both moving with the unhurried efficiency of professionals. They climbed into the dark sedan and drove past me without glancing in my direction. The license plate was clearly visible in my dashcam footage, Iowa plates, starting with 847. I dialed 911 at 11:55 p.m. There's a fire at 4127 Oak Ridge Lane in Cedar Rapids. The house is fully engulfed. No one is home. I'm a neighbor. I saw it from my window. I hung up before they could ask more questions. The fire trucks arrived at 12:02 a.m. By then, the flames had spread to Lucas's room, to the hallway, to the attic where my mother's old photo albums were stored. Firefighters dragged hoses across the lawn where I'd learned to ride a bike. Water arced through the night air, too late to save anything that mattered. My home was gone. But Lucas and I were alive, and I had proof of who had taken everything else from us. I drove back to the motel at the speed limit, hands steady, mind racing. Lucas was still asleep when I returned. I checked the locks, checked the windows, and sat down at the desk with my laptop to take inventory of what I had. Video from the hidden camera. Time-stamped footage of Chad, David, and two unknown men inside my home. Chad handing over keys. Chad pointing to the second floor. Video from my dash cam, the license plate of the sedan, the two men fleeing the burning house, the fire itself. Text messages, my conversation with Chad about the broken car, his lack of concern, his suggestion to take my time. I opened a new browser tab and searched Arson Investigation Iowa and Insurance Fraud Attorney Cedar Rapids. The search results populated with law firm advertisements, news articles about past cases, legal definitions. One name appeared repeatedly: Rebecca Sterling, founding partner of Sterling Legal Associates, specializing in victims of domestic violence and insurance fraud. Her Avvo profile showed 4.9 stars from 127 reviews, with phrases like "saved my life" and "believed me when no one else did." I bookmarked her page. At 2:15 a.m., my phone rang. Marcus. I just landed. I got your message. Lisa, what's happening? I told him everything. The whispered conversation Lucas overheard, the motel, the cameras, the fire, the license plate. Silence stretched across the line. Then, I'm getting on the next flight home. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. You can't. If Chad finds out we're alive before I have enough evidence, he'll destroy everything. He'll have time to create alibis, to blame someone else, to... Lisa, trust me. Please. I know what I'm doing. I took a breath. I need you to stay invisible. Let them think their plan worked. Let them get comfortable, and then we'll take everything from them. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he finally said. But I'm flying to Des Moines instead. I'll be an hour away if you need me. Thank you. I hung up and stared at the wall. In 7 hours, I would call Rebecca Sterling. In 3 days, Chad Morrison would be in handcuffs. He just didn't know it yet. I woke Lucas at 6 and drove us to a diner 3 towns over. We needed to be away from Cedar Rapids, away from anyone who might recognize us and mention it to Chad. The local news came through on my phone while Lucas picked at his pancakes. Breaking. House fire in Cedar Rapids claims 2 lives. Authorities investigating possible arson. 2 lives. They thought we were dead. I scrolled through the article. The fire department had responded at 12:02 a.m. The house was a total loss. 2 bodies were believed to be inside. A woman and a child. Identification was pending. My phone buzzed. A text from Janet Powell. Lisa, honey, I just heard. I am so sorry. Your mother would be devastated. If there's anything I can do for Chad in his time of grief, please let me know. She thought I was dead too. I opened Facebook and searched for Chad's profile. His latest post, made at 7:23 a.m., was a block of text with a single photo of our house before the fire. I don't have words. My stepdaughter Lisa and my grandson Lucas were taken from us last night in a terrible tragedy. They were my family. They were my everything. Please keep them in your prayers as we navigate this unimaginable loss. The fire department is still investigating, but we believe it was an electrical issue. Lisa always worried about the old wiring. I should have listened. I should have fixed it. That guilt will haunt me forever. 147 reactions. Crying emojis, heart emojis, comments pouring in from church friends, neighbors, distant relatives. Chad, we are praying for you. God has a plan, even when we can't see it. Those angels are in heaven now with Susan. I watched my stepfather collect sympathy for our deaths while eating ham and eggs at the First Baptist post-service brunch. Not a single tear in any of the photos people posted. Not a quiver in the video someone shared of him thanking the community for their support. He was performing grief, and 147 people were applauding. I know some of you watching have experienced betrayal from the people you trusted most, the ones who were supposed to protect you, the ones who smiled at family dinners while planning something unforgivable. If this story is hitting close to home, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You're going to want to see what happens when I walk into that coffee shop and sit across from the man who tried to murder my son. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment and let me know. And stick with me, because Chad Morrison is about to learn that underestimating a cybersecurity engineer was the last mistake he ever made. Friday, March 15th. 10 o'clock a.m. Rebecca Sterling's office occupied the third floor of a glass building in downtown Cedar Rapids. I'd taken a risk coming back into the city, but I needed help, and I needed it from someone who would believe me without question. The woman who greeted me in the conference room was not what I expected. Mid-40s, silver-streaked hair pulled into a practical bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked like someone's favorite aunt, until you noticed the steel in her eyes. "Mrs. Huntington," she gestured to a chair. "My assistant said this was urgent." I placed my laptop on the table and opened it. 23 hours ago, my stepfather tried to have me and my 8-year-old son killed for insurance money. I have video evidence of the conspiracy, dashcam footage of the arsonists fleeing the scene, and a very clear license plate. Rebecca's expression didn't change, but she leaned forward. "Show me." I played the footage, the hidden camera, the dash cam, the timeline, 47 minutes of evidence laid out in sequence, with timestamps and metadata intact. When it ended, Rebecca removed her glasses and set them on the table. "This isn't just insurance fraud," she said quietly. "This is attempted murder in the first degree. 2 counts, one for you, one for your son." "I know. You need to go to the police." "I know that too, but I want to make sure everything is ironclad first. I want to make sure he can't wiggle out of this with a good lawyer and a sympathetic jury." Rebecca nodded slowly. "I have a contact. Detective Eleanor Vance, Cedar Rapids PD, specializes in arson and insurance fraud. She's worked with me on 3 previous cases. She's thorough, she's smart, and she doesn't let anyone slip through the cracks." She picked up her phone. "Let me make a call." Within an hour, I was sitting across from the woman who would help me put Chad Morrison in prison. Detective Eleanor Vance was 48 years old, with gray-streaked brown hair cut short and practical, and a handshake that could crack walnuts. She'd spent 20 years in law enforcement, the last 12 specializing in arson investigation. "Mrs. Huntington?" She sat across from me in the sterile conference room of the Cedar Rapids Police Department, a legal pad open in front of her. "Ms. Sterling has briefed me on the basics. I'd like to see the evidence myself." I showed her everything, the same footage I'd shown Rebecca, plus the cloud backups I'd made of every document Chad had ever asked me to sign. Insurance paperwork, property deeds, financial records. Vance watched in silence, occasionally pausing to write something down. When the dashcam footage ended, the sedan's license plate frozen on screen, she picked up her phone and made a call. "Run Iowa plate 847KXL through the system. I need registration and owner history within the hour." She hung up and looked at me. "The plate traces to a vehicle registered to a Marcus Webb of Des Moines. Mr. Webb has priors: arson, possession, assault. His known associate is Tyler Briggs, same sheet. Hired arsonists, professional criminals. My stepfather had hired professionals. I'm going to subpoena Mr. Morrison's financial records," Vance continued. "Bank accounts, credit cards, cash withdrawals. If he paid these men, there'll be a trail." "There's something else." I pulled up a file on my laptop. "I found this months ago and didn't think anything of it. An envelope from Midwest Life Insurance with my name on it. Chad took it before I could open it." Vance leaned forward. "I'll request policy information from Midwest. If there's a life insurance policy on you with Morrison as beneficiary, then you have motive." "Then I have motive." She almost smiled. "Mrs. Huntington, I've worked a lot of these cases. Most of them, the evidence is circumstantial. People walk. Not this time. You've given me everything I need to make sure your stepfather spends the rest of his life in prison. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. What do we do next? Next, Vance said, we set a trap. Saturday, March 16th. The conference room at Sterling Legal Associates. 3 of us around the table, me, Rebecca, and Detective Vance, a whiteboard on the wall with a timeline of events, a folder of evidence thick enough to kill a man if you dropped it on his head. The financial records came through this morning, Vance said. 3 days before the fire, Chad Morrison withdrew $15,000 in cash from his personal savings account. The same day, he visited an auto shop in Des Moines, owned by an uncle of Marcus Webb. The connection, Rebecca murmured. The connection. Vance tapped the folder. We also have the insurance policy, $750,000 on your life, Mrs. Huntington. Purchased 18 months ago. Chad Morrison is the sole beneficiary. I felt sick. 18 months. He'd been planning this for 18 months. It gets worse, Vance continued. The policy was originally for $250,000. He increased the amount twice. Once to $500,000, then to $750,000. The last increase was 6 months ago. Right around the time Lucas started feeling uncomfortable. Right around the time Chad began asking about Marcus's travel schedule with unusual specificity. We have enough to arrest him now, Rebecca said. But if we move too early, a defense attorney could argue circumstantial evidence, claim the money was for something else, challenge the video authenticity. So we need him to confess, I said. Vance nodded. We need him to say it out loud, on recording, in a context where he believes he's safe. Riverside Brew, I said. Both women looked at me. It's the coffee shop on Maple Street. Chad goes there every Sunday morning after church. His friends from First Baptist meet him there. He's relaxed, he's comfortable, he's surrounded by people who think he's a grieving patriarch. Vance smiled, a thin, predatory thing. Then that's where we'll take him down. What do you need from me? I need you to call him tomorrow morning, tell him you survived, tell him you're scared and confused and you need his help. And then I need you to sit across from him and let him think he's still in control. I thought about Lucas, still hiding in a hotel room in Des Moines with Marcus. I can do that, I said. I can do anything if it means keeping my son safe. Sunday, March 17th, 8 o'clock a.m. The hotel room near Riverside Brew was small but functional. Marcus had driven down from Des Moines at 5 in the morning, arriving with Lucas still sleepy in the back seat. We'd checked into the room under his name, paid cash, and now stood together in the pale morning light while Detective Vance attached a wire to the inside of my sweater. The microphone is in the seam, she explained, her fingers quick and efficient. Range of about 30 feet, crystal clear audio. 3 plainclothes officers will be inside the coffee shop, 1 at the counter, 2 at corner tables. I'll be in the van across the street monitoring the feed. What if he notices the wire? He won't. The man thinks you're a helpless victim. He's not going to imagine for a second that you came prepared. Marcus stood by the window, jaw tight. Lucas was still at the hotel with an officer, playing video games and eating room service pancakes. He didn't know what was about to happen. I wanted to keep it that way as long as possible. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked. You don't have to be the one in that room with him. Let the police. He needs to believe I'm scared, I said. He needs to think he still has power over me. That's the only way he'll let his guard down. I picked up my phone and dialed Chad's number. It rang twice. Hello? His voice was cautious, confused. Dad. I forced a tremor into my voice. It's Lisa. I'm alive. I don't know what happened. The car broke down and we stayed at a motel, and then I saw the news. Silence. 5 heartbeats of absolute silence. Where are you? The confusion in his voice was already giving way to calculation. I could hear him thinking, recalibrating. I'm scared, I whispered. I don't know who to trust. Can we meet? Somewhere public? I need family right now. Another pause. Riverside Brew, 9 o'clock. I'll be there. I hung up and looked at Vance. He's coming. Riverside Brew at 9:15 a.m. was exactly what I remembered. Exposed brick walls, mismatched wooden tables, the smell of fresh ground beans and cinnamon rolls. A chalkboard menu behind the counter listed seasonal specials in colored chalk. Local art hung on every available surface, landscapes of Iowa farmland, abstract pieces from the university. I counted 47 people as I walked to a corner table near the back. Regulars with laptops, young families with strollers, a group of elderly women playing cards by the window. 3 plainclothes officers positioned exactly where Vance had described. The barista in the black apron, the man reading a newspaper, the woman with the laptop pretending to work. I sat with my back to the wall, facing the entrance. My hands were steady. My heart was not. At 9:17 a.m., Chad Morrison walked through the door. He was dressed for church, pressed khakis, a blue Oxford shirt, a gold cross pin on his lapel. His face was arranged in an expression of profound relief, the mask of a worried father reuniting with his lost daughter. Lisa. He crossed the room in quick strides and pulled me into a hug I didn't return. Thank God. Thank God you're alive. He smelled like aftershave and coffee and something else. Something sharp underneath, like sweat he'd tried to cover up. We sat across from each other. He reached for my hands. I let him take them. I've been calling hospitals, he said, his voice thick with rehearsed emotion. The police kept telling me they found 2 bodies, but I wouldn't believe it. I knew you were out there somewhere. The car broke down, I recited. We stayed at a motel. I didn't see the news until morning. And Lucas? Where's Lucas? He's safe. He's with Marcus. A flicker in his eyes. Quickly suppressed, but I caught it. Marcus? When did he come back from Denver? When he heard what happened. Chad nodded slowly, scanning the room. His gaze lingered on the barista, the newspaper man, the laptop woman, checking for threats, finding none. Have you talked to the police yet? He asked. Too casual, too deliberate. No. I didn't know what to tell them. I needed to see you first. He smiled. And for the first time, I saw what Lucas had seen. The eyes didn't match the mouth. I need to understand what happened, I said, my voice still fragile. The news said arson. They said someone set the fire on purpose. Chad's expression flickered. Just for an instant. A micro-expression of surprise that I'd used that word. Then the mask resettled. These old houses, he said smoothly. Electrical problems, faulty wiring. Your mother always worried about it, remember? I do. I paused. But the fire started in my bedroom, Dad. The news said it started exactly where I sleep, and the back door was unlocked when the firefighters arrived. His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, I let my voice trail off. Something doesn't feel right. Silence stretched between us. The coffee shop hummed with ambient noise, the hiss of the espresso machine, conversations at neighboring tables, the clink of ceramic on wood. 47 witnesses to whatever came next. Lisa. Chad leaned forward, lowering his voice. I know you're scared. I know this is confusing, but sometimes bad things just happen. Sometimes there's no explanation. Then why did you turn off the cameras? His face went blank. Completely, utterly blank. I know about the ring system, I continued, keeping my tone conversational. You disabled all 3 cameras at 8:30 the night of the fire, but there was one camera you didn't know about, the one I installed in my office after I caught David going through my files. I watched the calculation happen behind his eyes, the weighing of options, the assessment of risk. His mask was cracking, and beneath it was something cold and reptilian. You've been busy, he said. No longer the grieving grandfather, just flat. I'm a cybersecurity engineer, Dad. It's my job to monitor systems, to protect against threats. I held his gaze, to identify who's trying to break in. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with new eyes. What exactly do you want, Lisa? I want to know why. A long pause. And then, incredibly, he smiled. Okay, he said. You want to know why? Fine. Let's talk about why. Your mother made a mistake when she married me. Chad's voice had changed. The warmth was gone, the performance abandoned. This was the real man underneath, the one my son had recognized from the beginning. She thought I was stable, reliable, a good bet for her twilight years. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. What she didn't know was that I'd already burned through my pension gambling online. By the time she got sick, I was $380,000 in debt to people who don't accept payment plans. My hands were steady on the table. The wire was recording every word. The house was supposed to be my ticket out. Sell it, pay off the debts, start fresh. But then Susan left it to you, her precious daughter, her miracle baby who survived the NICU and grew up to be so goddamn successful. So you took out a life insurance policy on me. $750,000. He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. Enough to clear my debts and live comfortably for another 20 years. All I had to do was wait for the right moment. When Marcus was away. When Marcus was away, he confirmed. I paid $15,000 to two professionals. They were supposed to make it look like an electrical fire. Quick, clean, no suspicion. You and Lucas would go to sleep and never wake up. My blood ran cold, but my voice stayed level. And when I called to say the car broke down, I almost canceled the whole thing. He shook his head. But I'd already paid. The men were already in position. I figured, what the hell? The house burns, I still collect the insurance on the property. It wasn't a total loss. He leaned forward, close enough that I could smell his coffee breath. But then you survived. You and that brat. And now here we are. I stood up slowly. Here we are, I agreed. In a room full of 47 witnesses who just heard you admit to attempted murder. Chad's face went white. The wire I'm wearing? I touched my collar. It's been broadcasting to Detective Eleanor Vance of the Cedar Rapids Police Department for the last 15 minutes. Behind him, the barista set down her towel. The newspaper man folded his paper. The laptop woman closed her screen. All three of them reached for badges. Chad Morrison. Detective Vance's voice cut through the suddenly silent coffee shop as she walked in from the street. You're under arrest for attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and arson. You have the right to remain silent. Chad lunged for the door. Two officers caught him before he made it 3 steps. As they snapped the handcuffs on his wrists, I looked around the room. The elderly card players, the families with strollers, the church friends he saw every Sunday. They were all staring at him. And for the first time in 10 years, Chad Morrison had nothing to say. The officers pulled Chad toward the door while he twisted in their grip, face contorted with rage. He tried to speak, to explain, to deny, to threaten, but his words came out as incoherent sputtering. The coffee shop remained frozen. 47 people who had come in for a Sunday morning latte were now witnesses to the arrest of a man they'd thought was a pillar of the community. I recognized 3 of them from First Baptist: Mrs. Henderson, who had brought casseroles to my mother's funeral; Mr. and Mrs. Davis, who sat in the same pew as Chad every week. They stared at him with the particular horror of people realizing they'd been deceived. Rebecca appeared at my side, her hand warm on my shoulder. You did it, she said quietly. It's over. I didn't feel relief yet. That would come later. Right now, I felt numb, hollowed out, like I'd been running on adrenaline for 3 days, and my body had finally stopped producing it. I need to see my son. Marcus is bringing him. They're 5 minutes away. I walked out of Riverside Brew into the March sunlight. The police van was parked across the street, Chad already inside. He looked at me through the window, the man who had lived in my mother's house, eaten at my table, smiled at my son, and I saw nothing in his eyes but cold fury. I didn't look away. A minute later, Marcus's car pulled up. and Lucas scrambled out before it fully stopped. He ran across the sidewalk and threw himself into my arms with enough force to knock me back a step. "Mom!" His voice was muffled against my chest. "Mom, you're okay." I held him tight and closed my eyes. "I'm okay, baby. We're both okay. And we're going to stay that way." The dominoes fell quickly after that. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, David Morrison was in custody. Officers found him at his apartment in Coralville, 15 minutes from Cedar Rapids, frantically packing a suitcase. His laptop contained 47 text messages with his father, dating back 3 months, discussing the plan in increasingly specific terms. "I didn't know he was serious," David told the detectives during his interrogation. "I thought it was just talk. I never thought he'd actually do it." The text messages said otherwise. One, sent 3 days before the fire, read, "MW and TB confirmed, 15K ready, Thursday night after M leaves. Don't come to the house. MW and TB, Marcus Webb and Tyler Briggs." The arsonists were arrested in Des Moines 3 days later, found through a combination of license plate records and cell phone data. They'd been paid $15,000 in cash, with another $35,000 promised upon successful collection of the insurance payout. Morrison said it would be easy, Marcus Webb told detectives. "In and out, make it look electrical." He said no one would ever know. The evidence pile grew. Financial records showing Chad's gambling debts, $380,000 owed to online platforms with connections to organized lending operations. Bank withdrawals matching the payments to Webb and Briggs. A burner phone found in Chad's garage with calls to the arsonists on the night of the fire. But the piece that sealed everything was the insurance policy. Midwest Life provided complete documentation. A $750,000 policy on my life, purchased 18 months prior, with Chad Morrison as sole beneficiary. Records showed he'd increased the payout amount twice in the past 6 months, each time citing changed family circumstances. Detective Vance called me on Wednesday. "We have enough for first-degree murder charges," she said. "All 3 of them are looking at 20 to life." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat in the hotel room in Des Moines and cried for the first time since Thursday night. The Cedar Rapids Gazette broke the story on Monday morning. "Stepfather arrested in murder-for-profit plot. Investigators say man hired arsonist to kill stepdaughter and grandson for $750,000 insurance payout." The article included a photo of Chad being led from the coffee shop in handcuffs, his face frozen in an expression of stunned disbelief. It detailed the evidence, the surveillance footage, the financial records, the recorded confession, the testimonies of Webb and Briggs. By noon, KCRG-TV had run 3 segments. A reporter stood outside the burned shell of my childhood home, describing the chilling plot in dramatic tones. Another segment featured interviews with neighbors. "I can't believe it," said one woman I didn't recognize. "He always seemed so nice." "I knew something was wrong," said Mrs. Henderson, who had brought those funeral casseroles. "The way he looked at Lisa sometimes, there was something cold in it." Chad's Facebook profile, still visible to the public, became a battleground. The 147 condolence messages from Sunday morning were buried under hundreds of new comments, each more furious than the last. "Murderer. You tried to kill a child. Burn in hell where you belong." First Baptist Church released an official statement Tuesday afternoon. "We are shocked and heartbroken to learn of the allegations against a longtime member of our congregation. Our prayers are with the victims of this tragedy. The church had no knowledge of or involvement in these alleged crimes." Janet Powell, my mother's friend, gave an interview to the Gazette that same day. "Susan tried to warn Lisa about Chad before she passed. She knew something wasn't right. Lisa survived because she finally listened to that warning, through her own son." I read the article 3 times. Then I called Janet and thanked her for speaking up. 4 years too late, but better than never. "The story's almost over, but there's still so much I want to share with you. About healing, about setting boundaries, and about what I learned from the 8-year-old boy who saved my life." If you're still here with me, please take a second to subscribe and hit that notification bell. There are more stories like this one waiting for you, and I don't want you to miss them. What do you think Lucas will remember about all of this when he's grown? Will he carry it with him forever, or will he find a way to let it go? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And now, let me tell you what happened next. Detective Vance called me into her office a week after the arrest. "I want to show you something," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "This is what we've pieced together about Morrison's financial situation." I opened it. Bank statements, loan documents, correspondence with online gambling platforms. The numbers told a story worse than I'd imagined. Chad had started gambling 3 years before my mother died. Small amounts at first, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. But the losses compounded. He chased his losses with bigger bets. He borrowed against his pension, then his savings, then from private lenders with interest rates that would make a loan shark blush. By the time my mother was diagnosed with cancer, he owed $200,000. By the time she died, it was $380,000. "He tried to take out a policy on your mother," Vance said quietly. 2 months before she passed, the insurance company rejected it due to her pre-existing condition. I stared at the paper in my hands. The words blurred together. "You think he—" "We don't have evidence of foul play in your mother's death. Her medical records indicate she passed from natural causes related to her illness." Vance paused. "But the timing of that insurance application is concerning." I remembered Janet's words. Chad changed after Susan got sick, started asking about her insurance, her will, the house. "He was already planning," I said. "Even then." "It appears so. When your mother died and left the house to you, he needed a new plan. The insurance policy on your life was his solution." I closed the folder. I didn't want to look at it anymore. "Mrs. Huntington," Vance said, "your mother may not have been able to protect you, but she tried. She told Janet. She planted a seed, and that seed saved your life." I thought of Lucas, whispering at the airport. A warning passed through generations of women who knew when something was wrong, even when they couldn't prove it. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." 3 weeks after the arrest, I sat in the gallery of Lynn County Courthouse for Chad Morrison's arraignment hearing. Marcus held my hand on one side. Rebecca Sterling sat on the other, her notepad balanced on her knee. Lucas was with Janet Powell, safe at her house, watching cartoons and eating cookies. I didn't want him anywhere near this. Chad stood behind the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, wrists shackled to a chain around his waist. He'd hired a private attorney, a man named Bradley Whitmore from Des Moines, known for defending clients with money and without scruples. The judge, a gray-haired woman named Patricia Kellner, read the charges. "Chad Allen Morrison, you are charged with 2 counts of attempted murder in the first degree, 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder, 1 count of insurance fraud exceeding $250,000, and 1 count of arson in the first degree. How do you plead?" Whitmore stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." The prosecutor, a young woman named Allison Burke, presented the state's case for bail denial. "Your Honor, the defendant hired professional criminals to burn down a house with his stepdaughter and her 8-year-old son inside, solely for financial gain. He confessed to the crime in a recorded conversation with the victim. Flight risk is substantial, as is the risk of witness intimidation." Whitmore objected. He argued that Chad had deep community ties, no prior criminal record, and posed no threat to anyone. Judge Kellner was unmoved. "Bail denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial." She set a preliminary hearing date for 6 weeks out. As the deputies led Chad from the courtroom, he turned and looked at me. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I met his gaze until the door closed behind him. When we got to the car, Marcus asked if I was okay. "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm free." The first week after the arraignment, Marcus took a leave of absence from work. "The company can survive without me for a month," he said when I protested. "You and Lucas can't." We found a small apartment in Coralville, far enough from Cedar Rapids that we wouldn't run into anyone who knew us, close enough that Rebecca Sterling and Detective Vance could reach us when needed. 3 bedrooms, a kitchen with a window that looked out on a maple tree, a living room where Lucas could spread out his Lego sets without worrying about stepping on them. It wasn't home, but it was safe. Marcus cooked dinner every night. Simple things: pasta, grilled cheese, soup from a can, but he made them with intention, with love. He sat with Lucas for homework. He held me when I couldn't sleep. "I should have been there," he said one night in the dark. "That night. I should have been home." "If you had been home, you might have died too." "I should have seen the signs earlier. I should have protected you." I rolled over to face him, even though I couldn't see his features in the darkness. "You're protecting me now. That's what matters. I'm never traveling again. I already told my boss. They can fire me if they want." "Marcus." "I mean it, Lisa. Family first. Always. I don't care about the promotion or the salary. I care about being here." I found his hand in the dark and squeezed it. "Then be here," I said. "That's all I've ever wanted." The letter from David arrived through Rebecca Sterling's office. "He wants to communicate with you," she said over the phone. "His lawyer is framing it as a statement of remorse. He claims he didn't know the full extent of his father's plan." "I've seen the text messages," I said. "He knew exactly what was going to happen." "I know. I just wanted to give you the option." I thought about David going through my desk, David photographing my financial documents, David standing in my hallway at midnight while his father pointed to the upstairs bedrooms where my son and I slept. "Draft a response for me," I said. "Tell him I have nothing to say to him. Any future contact attempts will be documented and reported to the court as witness intimidation." Done. "And Rebecca? Make sure the prosecution knows about every single text message he sent. I don't want his remorse narrative to hold any weight at trial." "It won't." I hung up and blocked every phone number and email address associated with the Morrison family, every single one. I deleted photos that included them from my camera roll. I threw away Christmas cards and birthday notes and the fake sincere sympathy letter Chad had sent when my mother died. Marcus asked if I felt guilty cutting them off so completely. "No," I said. "I feel free. These people tried to murder my son. I don't owe them closure. I don't owe them conversation. I owe them nothing except the justice system, and the justice system will handle the rest." For the first time in 10 years, the weight of their expectations was gone. The trial took 8 months. I testified twice, once about the night of the fire, once about Chad's confession in the coffee shop. Lucas never had to take the stand. His recorded statement, given to a child psychologist under court supervision, was admitted as evidence instead. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. On November 12th, Chad Morrison was found guilty on all counts. 2 charges of attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and arson. His sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Judge Kellner looked at him across the courtroom, the man in the orange jumpsuit who had once been a deacon at First Baptist Church, and handed down 25 years to life, with no possibility of parole for the first 20 years. David Morrison pled guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for testimony against his father. He received 8 years. Marcus Webb and Tyler Briggs, the arsonists, each received 15 years for their roles. I sat in the gallery as they led Chad away for the last time. He turned just once and searched for me in the crowd. I held his gaze. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Everything I had to say was in that verdict. Afterward, Rebecca Sterling walked me to my car. "How do you feel?" I considered the question. The house was gone. My mother's memories, my childhood, all reduced to ash and insurance claims. But Lucas was alive. Marcus was beside me. And the man who tried to take them both from me would die in prison. "I feel like it's over," I said. "And I feel like I can finally move on." 1 year after the fire, we moved to Des Moines. The house we bought was nothing like the one on Oak Ridge Lane. Single story, modern construction, open floor plan with big windows that let in the Iowa sun. No creaky stairs, no rooms that held ghosts. Just 3 bedrooms, a backyard with a swing set, and enough space for the future. Lucas started 4th grade at Roosevelt Elementary. Within a month, he had a best friend named Jake, a spot on the soccer team, and a teacher who called me after the first week to say how thoughtful and perceptive he was. The therapy helped. Dr. Nguyen, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma, met with Lucas once a week. She taught him techniques for managing anxiety, ways to process what he'd been through. By the end of the school year, the nightmares had mostly stopped. Marcus took a new position with TechMart's corporate office. No more travel, no more hotel rooms. He was home every night for dinner, every weekend for soccer games, every holiday for the traditions we were building together. I got promoted to senior security engineer at SecureNet Solutions, a remote position with more responsibility and better pay. My work had saved my life once. Now it was building a life worth saving. We didn't talk about Chad. We didn't talk about the fire. But we talked about the future. College funds, vacation plans, the dog Lucas had been begging for since we moved. One Sunday morning, while making pancakes in our new kitchen, Marcus looked at me with something like wonder. "We made it," he said. I smiled. "We're still making it, every day." The invitation came from Safe Families Iowa, a nonprofit organization focused on domestic safety and violence prevention. They were hosting a conference in Cedar Rapids, ironically, the city I'd fled, and wanted me to give the keynote speech. When technology saves lives, lessons from a survivor. I almost said no. The thought of standing in front of 300 strangers and reliving the worst night of my life made my stomach clench. But then, I thought about the women and children in that audience. The ones in situations like mine. The ones who might learn something that could keep them alive. I said yes. The conference was held at a downtown hotel on a Saturday in March. Almost exactly 1 year after I'd sat across from Chad in Riverside Brew. Marcus and Lucas drove down with me. They waited in the audience, front row center, while I took the stage. "A year ago, I watched my house burn down," I began. "I watched it from a motel parking lot 12 minutes away because my 8-year-old son trusted his instincts enough to warn me, and because I trusted him enough to listen." I talked about the hidden camera that Chad hadn't known about, the cloud backups that preserved evidence when physical storage was destroyed, the dashcam footage that captured license plates in the dark, the cybersecurity training that had made me paranoid enough to question everything. "Technology didn't save my life," I said. "My son did, but technology gave me the proof I needed to make sure the man who tried to kill us would spend the rest of his life behind bars." The audience was silent, 300 faces watching, absorbing. "If something feels wrong in your life," I concluded, "trust that feeling. Document everything. Back up everything. Tell someone you trust. And if you have children, listen to them. Really listen. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one that knows the truth." The applause lasted a full minute. Afterward, 17 people came up to thank me personally. 3 of them were crying. Lucas met me backstage with a hug. "You did great, Mom." "I learned from the best," I told him. We stopped at Janet Powell's house on the way home from the conference. She was waiting on her porch with lemonade and a cardboard box sealed with packing tape. The box looked old, dusty at the corners, slightly crushed on one side. "Your mother gave this to me the week before she passed," Janet said, settling into her rocking chair. "She made me promise not to open it, made me promise to keep it safe until—" She paused. "Until you needed it," she said. I think she knew somehow. Even then. I took the box to the porch swing and cut the tape with my keys. Inside, photographs. My mother and me at my college graduation. My parents' wedding, before my father died. Baby pictures of Lucas, printed from emails I'd sent her when she was too sick to visit. And underneath the photos, a letter. handwritten, dated 2 weeks before she died. My dearest Lisa, it began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And Janet has kept her promise. I need you to know something I couldn't say out loud while I was still alive. I read the rest with tears streaming down my face. She had suspected Chad. She had seen the way he looked at our assets, heard the questions he asked about her will. She hadn't had proof, just the instinct of a woman who had survived one bad marriage and recognized the warning signs of another. Trust yourself, she wrote in the final paragraph. Trust your gut. And most of all, trust Lucas. That boy has my eyes, but he has your heart. He'll see what others miss. Listen to him. I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. She had been right about everything, and somehow, across the boundary of death, she had helped save us both. Lucas turned 9 on a sunny Saturday in April. We threw a party in our new backyard. Jake from school, 6 other friends from soccer, a bounce house, and a cake shaped like a rocket ship because Lucas had recently decided he wanted to be an astronaut. Watching him run and laugh with the other kids, you'd never know what he'd been through. The therapist said that was good. Resilience, she called it. The ability to integrate trauma without being defined by it. But I saw the moments when he was quiet. The way he still checked locks before bed. The alertness in his eyes when unfamiliar cars parked on our street. After the party, when the guests had gone and Marcus was cleaning up streamers, Lucas found me on the back porch. Mom? He sat down beside me, legs dangling. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you think I'll always remember that night at the airport? I considered the question carefully. He deserved honesty. I think you might, I said. Some things stay with us. But remembering doesn't mean it has to hurt. It can just be a part of your story. A part that made you who you are. What if I don't want it to be part of my story? Then we work on that, together. With Dr. Nguyen, with Dad, with me. I put my arm around him. You saved my life, baby. You saved both our lives. That's the part of the story I want you to remember. He leaned into me, small and warm. I was really scared. I know, and you were brave anyway. That's what courage is. We sat together until the sun went down, and neither of us mentioned the Morrison family once. The letter arrived 6 months after Chad's sentencing. I recognized the prison's return address, Iowa State Penitentiary at Fort Madison. But I didn't recognize the handwriting. It was shakier than I remembered, less precise. I held the envelope for a long moment, feeling its weight. Then I walked to the kitchen, opened the trash can, and dropped it in without breaking the seal. Marcus watched from the doorway. Don't you want to know what he said? No. I washed my hands at the sink. Whatever he wrote, apology, accusation, manipulation, it doesn't change anything. He made his choices. I made mine. The conversation is over. What if he writes again? Then I'll throw that one away too. I had spent 10 years trying to earn Chad Morrison's approval. Trying to be a good daughter, a good granddaughter provider, a good scapegoat for whatever he needed me to be. I had swallowed my instincts and ignored my mother's warnings and let myself be diminished in my own home. Never again. The next week, I legally changed Lucas's last name. He was no longer connected to the Morrison family in any official capacity. Neither was I. Our new family was complete: Lisa, Marcus, and Lucas Huntington. 3 people who chose each other, every day, without conditions. That was the only family I needed. Sunday morning in Des Moines. Sunlight through the kitchen windows. The smell of bacon and coffee. Marcus was at the stove, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. Lucas sat at the table, drawing something in his sketchbook. A rocket ship I saw when I looked over his shoulder, with 3 tiny figures waving from the windows. That's us, he said. Going to space. Where are we going? Anywhere we want. He looked up at me with my mother's eyes. That's the best part. We get to choose. I poured myself coffee and stood at the window, watching our quiet street wake up. A neighbor walked her dog. A father pushed a stroller. Normal life, unfolding in ordinary rhythms. I thought about everything we'd survived to get here. The fire, the trial, the long months of healing, the moment at the airport when my son's whispered warning changed everything. I thought about my mother's letter, and Janet's courage, and the hidden camera that caught the proof we needed. I thought about the man in the prison cell, growing old alone, while we built something beautiful from the ashes of what he tried to destroy. And I thought about the lesson I would carry with me for the rest of my life. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. But if you trust yourself, if you listen to the small voices, if you document the warning signs, if you refuse to let anyone make you doubt your own instincts, you can survive almost anything. We survived, and now we get to choose what comes next. Thank you for staying with me until the end. This story was the hardest thing I've ever told, but I told it because I know some of you needed to hear it. If you've ever been made to feel small by the people who were supposed to lift you up, if you've ever doubted your own instincts because someone convinced you that you were crazy, I want you to know, you're not crazy. Trust yourself. If this video meant something to you, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. There are more stories waiting in the description below, stories about survival, about setting boundaries, about finding your power when everyone else tried to take it away. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I read every single one, and remember, the smallest voice in the room is sometimes the one telling the truth. I'll see you in the next video.